Welcome to another episode of Agency inTELL. I am one of your hosts, Roger Williams, along with my good friend, Robbie Adair. Hey, Robbie, how are you?
Hey, Roger, I'm doing well. How about yourself? How's the week going?
The week is going well. We just did a dinner with a bunch of agencies in Denver, and it went quite well. We ate at this restaurant, L5. If you're ever in Denver, I highly recommend going to L5. It's a tapas restaurant. It's on the top of a building. You've got views of downtown Denver. The service is amazing. The food was great. So highly recommend it. How about you? How's your week going?
It has been extremely busy, and I haven't had a really good meal this week. So now you just made me hungry.
Well, you're welcome. You are welcome.
Thank you.
Let me, we've got a really great episode for you today. A close friend of both of ours is on the show. And, this episode got me really thinking about the hype cycle that we're in, right? The AI hype cycle. It's at Mach 5. Every week, if not every day, there's a new agentic workflow or AI tool claiming it can replace a 10-person dev team with a single prompt. We're being told the era of the specialist is over and the era of the generalist with a chatbot is here. But if you've actually managed a server during a traffic spike, you know that hype doesn't keep the lights on. Engineering does.
Exactly, Roger. And, when that AI-generated code starts breaking or this easy little site builder hits its ceiling, you need someone who understands that fundamental architecture of the web and web technologies and the tools that you need, and security, things like that. And today's guest is in that space for sure. She's a developer, she's a consultant, legendary educator. Most of you will recognize her if you've watched any WordPress training out there. And she has literally taught thousands of people on LinkedIn Learning how to build websites and applications.
She's also a host of the Menopause podcast and a true veteran of the WordPress space. She knows how to bridge the gap between high-level technology and education. Welcome to Agency inTELL.
So we're here with Carrie. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank y'all. I'm very excited to be here. Excited for your new podcast.
Thank you.
Carrie, we've known each other for a while, but our listeners may not be as familiar with us. Can you just give us the quick Carrie Dills intro?
Well, it's a long story that started back in 1975, but I'll fast forward and just say that I've been part of the WordPress community since probably around 2012, 2013, and had worn a lot of hats in that time, but mostly developer, community advocate, instructor, and that's the work side of things. Yeah,
excellent.
I mean, that's a nutshell, maybe two nutshell.
Jacqueline of many trades.
Well, I like that, Jacqueline.
Yeah, Jacqueline of many trades. So speaking of, because like you said, you've been in the WordPress arena for quite some time, and now people listening may be like, what is Genesis? But there are a lot of us that remember Genesis framework era. And so you were really in the midst of that, I will say. Like, you were one of the faces of the Genesis framework. So tell us about that.
I don't want to overstate it, Robbie and Roger, but I was an influencer.
I love it.
I actually kind of hate that word, but it was, yes, for anybody that came into WordPress in that era, Genesis was the most popular theme framework. What it was for me, like when I started working with WordPress, and I'm a developer. And I came from a development background prior to my entry in WordPress. So I wanted to look under the hood and understand how it worked. And, it just takes time to orient yourself to anything. And so when I tried working with a bunch of different themes, and when I came across Genesis, they had this whole elaborate hooks and filter system that kind of built on what WordPress provides out of the box, but gave you even more. And for some reason, it just clicked in my brain. So I latched onto it and started using it for development and involved myself heavily in that community, even created a podcast around it and did some courses about it. I went all in on it and really just found a lovely, lovely community of people. So that was kind of a starting point. I didn't set out to be known as like the Genesis girl or whatever, or be pigeonholed in that way, but I am thankful to that as part of my career trajectory and giving me the opportunity to build some reputation in the space for being a subject matter expert in that.
Is Genesis still around?
Yeah.
Sorry, Roger. I just want to finish that up.
It is. It's not.
Okay.
It is being actively maintained.
Okay.
So in other words, if a security update or something like that came out, it would, and I am not a spokesperson. I don't work with it actively anymore. And it was before it kind of, and I won't even say the word sunset. It's still a product. It still exists. It is fully compatible with the block editor. It is not under active development. So it's not what I would choose as a starting point in the FSE era.
So I think there's the perfect segue, and that's where I was going to go is now that we're in the Gutenberg, the FSE, the block era, how do you recommend people get started now? But then, looking back on Genesis and the things that you kind of pulled from that as a developer, how does that still influence you today? And how's it all working?
Well, the transition into full site editing y'all been around this space for a while. It's been a bumpy road. Early adoption kind of bit you in the butt because you might roll something into production that was broken on a future release. Like there was just the early days were rocky, but it has matured tremendously. And I think the weird kind of gap that it's in I'm going to answer you in a sort of all around the way, and we can dig in wherever you want to dig in. But this gap between I need to be a coder to understand how to extend WordPress, and I want to design in the browser in a more WYSIWYG sort of way. Like before Gutenberg came along, page builders filled that space. And that's why we saw the popularity of like Beaver Builder. My Elementor totally dominates in a market share for page builders. And now I think there's so much that you can actually do just with native blocks and with the block editor. But for people who are in that transition time and don't spend, or don't want to spend their days in and days out tinkering with all this stuff, it's easier and quicker just to kind of go with what you know. But that said, I have enjoyed, for a while, I've stayed in sort of this hybrid theme land. So traditional PHP templating, but still leveraging the block editor, but using PHP templating for things like the header and the footer and that sort of thing. And in the past, I don't know, probably 6 months or so, I've started going to full from the ground up FSE builds. And the reason I resisted doing that earlier is because I really thought there's just a lot technically. If it depends on the kind of project, a brochure site, sure, kick it out in full site editing. But if you need really complex functionality and integrations, I wasn't seeing that capability with FSE. And I think it's matured to the point where, and I understand it better, how it works better, to be able to do more interesting things with it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's those times where I'm like, wait, which screen should I be in right now when I click into the template? And so, yeah, like the dashboard, I know they keep talking about fixing the admin area. Maybe
it's
someday.
Coming in version 10, I hear.
So you are, though, actively now, in the last 6 months, you have actually started building some things from scratch, from the ground up, only using full site editing, correct? I mean,
yes. And when I say from scratch, I have always been a proponent of a boilerplate theme. At one point, that was Genesis starter theme. And then when I moved in, then I started using Bill Erickson. He is a hugely influential and talented WordPress developer. I started working with his version of the Genesis starter theme. And then once Genesis sort of wasn't front and center anymore, I started working with his version of a hybrid block theme. And now that I'm in, and by the way, everybody has their tools. I'm not trying to use what you want to use. But for starting with FSE builds, I really like the OLLI theme. It's very lightweight and easy to extend, and they've got some good templates out of the box, and I like it as a starting point. I haven't really used their templates, but if you wanted patterns out of the box that are really pretty looking, that's a good choice.
Awesome. So now you've worked, obviously you've done training. You just mentioned that before, that you've done a lot of training, but you also, not only that, but because of your dev experience, you work in a lot of websites with LMSs, right? And I'm saying this because I also have hired her to do some work for me that was using an LMS, so I know this. Carrie's fantastic, by the way, in case anyone is looking to for help out there. So
Much
tell us about your
appreciated.
experience with LMSs, though, whether it
I
be WordPress or not.
It actually is WordPress in terms of, so I do stuff with LinkedIn Learning, whatever. I don't know. I have no clue. I'm not on whatever technical implementation end. I'm just, I'm the beautiful face, But when in the WordPress space, I've created and published my own courses and then worked with other sites that had course offerings. So there's a lot out there. And then there's, of course, third parties, the Teachable. And Robbie, I'm not sure what you use in OS training.
LearnDash.
LearnDash. Okay. So there are a ton of options out there that you can kind of look at what your requirements are for any given project and pick the one that works best.
What is your favorite in the WordPress world?
LearnDash is definitely the one I've worked the most with.
Definitely a lot of bells and whistles.
I'm sensing a sponsor position maybe for LearnDash here, and maybe the OLLI thing.
Yeah, no, really. Right?
Yep.
Get on that, Roger. Get on that.
You know who you are.
Carrie, when it comes to actually creating courses, though, to kind of dig into that for a little bit, there's so many different ways to peel that onion. When you're first starting to look at a topic and contemplating, whether you're doing it out of, personal enjoyment or, you've got a client coming to you, how do you start to approach those projects and really break them down so that it becomes manageable?
I like to understand the big picture. So I want context. How is something used? Why is it used? What's the actual goal? What's somebody trying to accomplish? And then back up from there and whatever the chosen technology happens to be, just try to pick it apart layer by layer, not to go back to your onion analogy, but it's actually a really good one to kind of understand the components involved. I am a learner and I mean, we're all learners, but like I enjoy learning. And so I think that's that curiosity for just how something works. Give me a screwdriver, let me take it apart, see what the guts look like, and then I can understand how to put it back together again and use it.
And I find also trainers out there learn a little bit differently because when you're learning, you're also in your mind thinking, how am I going to tell someone else how to do it? You're training. It's like you're training yourself even at the same time. It's bizarre. But I do think that trainers learn differently because they're not only just trying to learn that, they're also trying to learn the concept if they need to explain it to someone.
That's a really interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about that, but and part of my entry to teaching and it was through the back door was just blogging on my site, and I would figure out how to do something and then get excited and want to share that knowledge with somebody else. So I go, right, step 1, step 2, step 3, and, context along the way. Hey, you need this tooling, or you need to at least understand how this works, or, don't do this on a production site. Those little warnings along the way. And I don't know, I think my brain thinks in outlines and from point A to point B to point C.
So when one of the things he was asking you is how do you look at the new projects that you're coming on? And what I will say is that we see this all the time when we take on new projects, and I'm sure you see it too, is that a lot of times when you do start peeling back those layers and look, it's a hot mess, a little Frankenstein.
The screen
right?
face emoji.
Exactly. So when you do find something like that, what is your plan of attack that you give the client or suggest to the client?
Well, just as a practical step, I either need to get it in a staging environment or I need to get it on my local machine so that I can poke and prod and dig and look and understand without any risk of interfering with someone's production environment. From there, and this I talked about a little AI in the show prior to hitting the record button, but this is where I think an interesting opportunity with AI is. Just this week, I use Claude. Claude is my go-to for development tasks. And again, people can use Gemini or whatever tools they prefer. But what I like about Claude Code is I can open it contextually in a project in my development environment. It sees all the files of my project. It sees my workflow, like if it's a composer-based workflow, whatever. And then it can also see the database. And so a couple of days ago, I was working on a proposal, and the word that comes to mind is a HIPAA violation, but this is not a healthcare related site. And I'm not saying anything specific about the client, so it doesn't matter. Anyways, a little menopausal ADD brain. So
little plug for your show there too, by the way.
Yes.
Yes. The client is wanting to move away from WooCommerce into a much simpler, like bespoke, just a custom post type for products. And then they're going to put a button that goes to a third-party purchase provider. So they don't need all of the things that come with Woo, but it's a legacy site that's deeply embedded. And so I had Claude do my homework for me. Hey, Claude, go through, find every WooCommerce dependency, whether that's a plugin, whether it's a template, if there's shortcodes or other things used in post content, if there's any functionality either in the theme or other plugins that have a Woo dependency, and just give me like a write-up. What would, what are my risk factors if I hit the deactivate button? What are the things I need to watch out for? And other than having to constantly kind of babysit Claude to say, yes, you have permission to run this command or do this, it actually provided me a pretty comprehensive list that would have taken me, I don't know how long, but definitely what I accomplished with Claude in about 15 minutes would have probably been a couple of hours if I was manually going and tracking down all those things. So anyways, I know that was sort of a roundabout way of going back to your question, but I think using AI to get the context of a client's what their environment is, all the variables, and then you can make really detailed, informed decisions. Not just like, yeah, I'm going to take away WooCommerce and we're going to remove all those WooCommerce plugins you don't need. It allows for a really more thoughtful approach of, okay, we're going to scan all your content, we're going to remove dependencies, we're going to create a new post type, we're going to create a new template, we're going to migrate content from this to this, and go through it step by step. So it's not just a blind, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
It's specific and informed.
Called the proposal guessing game.
So there's an interesting segue there too. You brought up AI, so now we have to talk about it, just so everybody's still aware AI is still a thing. But, with AI, right, you have this ability to create much more custom things very quickly, right? The vibe coding, code is now solved, as they say, but the problem is, you still have to make software, which requires strategy and decisions. When you're approaching a client's project and there's the opportunity to create, let's say, custom blocks, because now AI can just write all these things for us, versus using core defined WordPress blocks, what goes into your decision-making process there from a long-term view, from a maintainable view, whereas, with custom code, now you have all this extra tech debt.
Right.
How do you balance that in the age of AI where it's just so easy to create this custom stuff on the fly?
Ooh, I have thoughts. I have thoughts both in relation to the code that's generated by AI and putting some guardrails around that, but to your point specifically about how to evaluate, do I do a custom block? Do I use a WordPress core block? Do I use some block library that already exists? The answer is always, it depends. In my ideal world, I am always starting with core blocks because those are always going to be maybe not in the earliest days of Gutenberg, but at this point, they are stable, they are known. There are some experimental features, but that's a known entity. For as long as the block editor is maintained, I mean, good grief, WordPress is backwards compatible to the dinosaur era. So it'll be maintained forever. Then that works. So if I'm extending core blocks, using core blocks and then extending core blocks based on how WordPress recommends doing that, then I feel like that gives the most longevity for something. And then there's instances of, I need something ridiculously specific. And as an example, I'm using ACF. I've got a custom field on a custom post type, and I just need a block to display that custom field somewhere. That's custom block territory. Because nobody else is, and it's probably even theme dependent. Because if they switch a theme, they might, or I don't know, that's debatable too. And then there's instances where I have a client that wants to have a lot of control. Most clients, they hand it off to me, go do it, do all of it. But I do have some clients that want to be in there and heavily editing content and design components themselves. And in that case, I think something like a cadence blocks or something that gives you the ability to fine tune everything and at each mobile or specific mobile breakpoints. That's something Core needs to do better, providing support for mobile breakpoints. Because let's say you set padding to be 20% or 2 rems or whatever. Well, that you get that padding at every breakpoint, and maybe you don't want the padding to be a little different at a different break. Anyways, that's a tangent. Anyhow, so I hate to be generic, but I think it really does depend. But if I can
Yeah.
stick with core blocks and extending core blocks, that's my favorite. If it's super niche, go with a custom block. If it's something that a developer that I trust or respect their code and they've got a plugin or like a single block plugin that already does what I need, I'm going to use that. I do, when I can, I like to avoid massive block libraries just because I think that adds a lot of tech debt if you ever want to move away from a framework or something like that. But again, different use cases warrant different answers.
And so kind of along those same lines, we had a larger agency on the last show, and they talked about using headless too. And do you ever work on headless instances using WordPress? And what's your thoughts on that? Is it just
That
kind of hype, you think? Because a lot of them use it. I feel like they market it as a competitive advantage.
I'll be just completely frank. I've not worked with headless implementations. That's just
Mhm.
not the kind of projects that I've gotten into. I think, it seems like 5 years ago or so, that was all the rage and all the buzz. And I don't
Mhm.
know. Where that stands these days. I think there's certainly use cases. WordPress is a great engine. You've already got
Mhm.
user management. You've already got, a lot of basics in place. And if you want WordPress on the back end and you want a completely different experience from, well, not even the back end, if you just want the functionality piece, then headless, I certainly see use cases. I just haven't gone there.
Yeah, all of the CMS, every CMS community I've been in, they go through their phases of, oh, headless is the way to go with this. Joomla did it. They even had their framework out separately. Drupal is big into doing headless things too. So I feel like all the major CMSs that it is, and like I said, I do find a lot of times I feel like it's agencies that are advertising it as it's just better. It's going to be
Mm.
better to do it headless. You know what I mean? And so anyway, I was just curious if you had worked with it at all. Or
Roger, you asked a question earlier about maintainability or whatnot. And I think if you're in a long-term relationship with a client, and Robbie, I know you're very well respected and have great client relationships, and like you're in it for the long haul. It's not
Mhm.
like I'm going to do this and then I'm going to hand you off to some other company to maintain your site down the road. I think you can get to those more highly customized, bespoke solutions if you're in those longer term engagements. If it's something where you're just sort of in and out, then yeah, leaving something nice for the next developer that comes along that they don't have to scratch their head and say, what on earth was that other
Yeah.
developer thinking? It's kind of nice.
So, kind of on that topic, right? So, inherited projects, when you are talking with a new client and they've got an existing site, what's your approach for taking a look at that project and deciding how Frankenstein this thing might be? Is it worth trying to continue working with the patient, or is it time to just start over from fresh? How does your process work in terms of evaluating those types of situations?
Again, I don't mean for this to sound generic, but understanding the larger context and what the objectives are, like what somebody's actually trying to do with the site. Is it ad revenue and just eyeballs, or is it, what is it that somebody's trying to do? Because I never want to prescribe a solution in the absence of context. You know what I mean? So I liken it to a car. You got a car. You love the car, but it's a 2006 and it's pushing 200,000 miles. Do you want to rebuild the engine, or, how much does it cost, right? Versus I could just go out and buy a new car and stop throwing good money after bad. And I think maybe it's not always that cut and dry with a site, but if you have a legacy site with just a lot of cruft, so my own site, I'll use that as an example. I rebuilt carriedills.com over the holidays, and I burnt it to the ground. I mean, didn't even use the database, like literally burn it to the ground, started on a fresh install. And that's my site. I know exactly what I've done to it, but it's been out there for 15 years or whatnot. And I've experimented with this and experimented with that. And I could only guess, even though my database wasn't massive or anything, it's just, ugh. It's a mess, and nobody, and not that anybody's going with doing the white glove dust test on my site, but I knew it would be ugly. So in that instance, it felt good just to kind of get a fresh start. But there's a lot of sites where that's risky. Like if you're an e-commerce site or have a ton of transaction history or interrelated components, then you may need to stay in that existing context, but be more surgical about how you're cleaning things up.
I
It
will say,
depends. That's my favorite answer.
It depends, yeah. I was going to say kind of what you're talking about too, especially whenever you hit one of those old ones, which I would like to point out. If it was 2006, that is a 20-year-old website. That just made me feel real old. We're not going to talk about that anymore. But what I was going to say is we do see, I mean, I literally have had some clients that come to me with like a 12-year-old website that has not been touched in 12 years. And I'm just like, first, I'm always amazed if it's still standing. I'm like, wow. Then I also then question, what host are you on that is still allowing you to run that stack?
It's not
know?
Kinsta, you can be damn sure.
It is not.
We go back
That
to
is true.
PHP 7.4 now. That's like, that's like 8 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, those kind of sites where you're like, I'm afraid if I just like set a password reset button that the site will just crumble to dust. Yeah. You just don't.
Those
No.
Those are the scariest too. Whenever they want you to write a proposal, those are the scariest to even log in or try to duplicate over onto a staging. You're just like, oh, please do not break anything while you're doing it.
Yeah.
So you're a one-person agency at this point, right?
I am.
But
I have
but
people I
you-
love to work with, but yes,
I was going to
I'm solo.
say. So I was going to say. So you work with other agencies, obviously, because you're working with mine. But you work with other freelancers out there. I kind of almost felt like you guys kind of had your own little, I'll call it a quorum versus just a little company, but that you had people that you rely on. Do you like working this way? Does this bring you more joy than, say, trying to run a whole agency with a team?
Yes. I don't want to run a whole agency. I've never wanted to run a whole agency. I don't want to be responsible for other people or their paychecks. So I very much enjoy being solo, but there are limits in that. One, there's the limit of what I know and I'm comfortable technically doing. And two, there's a limit of my time. So partnering with people I trust, I don't want to say it feels, how's the best way to say it? Like I think it makes me better. It makes me smarter. It exposes me to the way other people approach and solve problems. It extends the way I can get out of my own little thought loop, and just it's camaraderie. Like it can be lonely to work alone. And if you've got somebody that you're collaborating with, then you're interacting with them regularly. And it's I like both. I don't want to be full-time in an agency environment, but it's nice being solo and then having the opportunity to work with others.
Excellent. So it's 2026. Agency and agents have taken on a whole new meaning.
Oh.
You brought up Claude earlier, so I'm assuming Claude Code. And everything I'm hearing is everyone's just running agents, and they've got agents running agents, and it's agents all the way down.
I've got
So why
agents
do-
for my agents.
You got agents for your agents and your agents and your agenting. And so at what point do they still need us? And how do you deal with this hype cycle that we're in, where in 3 days, all of us are unemployed, but yet in 2 days, it's all going to crash and be a bubble? How are you talking to clients? How are you talking to partners who are, either they're frantic, they're losing their wits around all of this, or they're not even aware of these tools yet? Where do you land in this, and how are you helping people navigate?
I have never been what I would describe as a bleeding edge person. I'm never going to be out on the front end of tech. For instance, when a 0.0 release comes out, I'm going to hang around for the 0.1 to come out. So
That's called wisdom.
Yeah.
Said, there is so much hype, and there's unquestionably a change in the marketplace that AI is coming, and not just for web development, but for people in copywriting or designers, it carries impact across the board. I'm not worried about AI replacing me. I think my attitude is more like, how can I leverage AI to make myself more competitive and use it intelligently? So I don't fear it, but I do want to embrace it. I might be embracing it slower than the next person just because of my hesitancy to.
You're saying you don't have an OpenClaw running on your personal computer right now?
This is actually a hologram produced by Claude. Yes.
Are we being Claude right now?
What are you seeing with clients, though, Carrie? Are you seeing the majority are asking about or embracing AI, or the majority more like, don't use AI if you're going to do my stuff? Are you seeing any of that?
In terms of how I'm tooling a project or using AI to deliver a product for them. My clients don't care. They're hiring me because they trust me to do what they're asking to do, and they don't necessarily care how I get there. In terms of the businesses I work with, some of them I think are AI is like, what? And then others are super heavy into it. Like, how can I figure out content generation that doesn't sound like AI wrote it? Or how can I use it to scrape data or, use AI in some interesting ways in the context of their business? In terms of worrying about how I work or what tools I'm using, I haven't really come across that. Have you?
I've had a few clients that were a little like, you didn't use AI to generate any of this content or any of these images, did you? Where we use every now and then we use AI to generate content and images, but it's when we're like building a staging site for someone and we want them to see a design and how long it can take sometimes to get content from a client. So we don't wait on them. We go ahead and scaffold it up. We pop in some images, but sometimes that'll bite you. We actually did a video. We took some images as start frames. And so it was actually their own imagery we used, but we then generated video from it for a header video. And they loved it. They were just like, when they saw the design, they were like, this is fabulous. This is great. I was like, yeah, but let me stop you that we did generate that with AI. So I need to get some real video from you guys so we can replace it. And then when they sent us video, they didn't have professional quality video, all this kind of stuff. So even what we could put together for them, they were like, no, let's not do a video up there. We don't like it. And so I don't know, sometimes it kind of hurts, I guess, because we had a beautiful design and they loved it. But then when they saw it with their own, they were kind of like, "Ugh." And I was like, we could just go back to an AI video. It's okay. But some of them don't want that. They don't want it. They don't mind you using it with the build and all that. There are sometimes clients have legitimate reasons for that because there's something on it they need to copyright or whatever. And we know if you generate those images, you can't copyright them. So, there are some times where they have a legitimate, like, we really cannot use it on this. But then we have others that are, hey, if you can use it and it, because we can then put it in and match tone and all that. And they're, they still have the ability to edit afterwards. Then they're happy with it speeding it up for them. I mean, if they take too long to give me content, I'll start generating some and I'll be like, this has been generated. You must edit it all, but this is what we need for your site, something like this. And they're appreciative. Usually they're like, oh, thanks. I'll edit this down now, and get it back to you. So I don't know. It's across the board, though. Yeah, it changes across the board depending on the client and their needs, like you said.
Yeah. Well, it can be easier to start with, like you're saying, an article. Hey, this is AI. I need you to rewrite it in your voice and with your facts and all the things. But sometimes it's easier to edit something that exists than to look at a blank page and try to create. I get that.
Yes. Of course, the artistic people that your clients, they're the ones that are going to be the ones that are like, don't use AI on anything of mine. If they're artists and authors out there, there's a lot of them that are just very, very anti-AI and they don't want to have anything to do with it. They want it to touch any of their things. And, you can understand if you were a creative out there and you're like, my stuff is showing up in ChatGPT and Gemini, that it could put a sour taste in your mouth.
It makes me think of in the early days of music streaming, if you
Napster.
Yeah, exactly. Napster and similar services, though that was the one I used. I think statute of limitations is passed. Nobody's going to come arrest me for that. So streaming music and the whole battle to figure out what digital rights management look like for artists and for creators. I think we're in that similar era now. Like, AI, it's not going anywhere. So we need to figure out creatively how to still give attribution where attribution is due and copyright respect and all of those things. So I am not the person to solve that problem. I just think I see a parallel of where we were then in the early days of streaming with music and where we are now with AI generated stuff.
And actually, if you think about that streaming music issue as well as streaming video issues, they're still out there and they're not 100% solved. And I know that there for a while, there was a lot of talk about using blockchain to make some resolutions on those things and to help plagiarism for ebooks and things like that. And I do think at this point, now that AI is also in that whole mix, I do kind of feel like blockchain is going to rear its head again and be an answer for us out there. It's just a complicated answer. And so I think that's why we're not hearing it just yet because they've got to figure it out first how we can do this, right?
Shifting gears for a second, Carrie, for people that are like trying to get started now, or maybe they've got even a couple of years going. There's all this kind of fear mongering a little bit about how entry level positions are gone because now we have AI. If you were starting over again right now or getting started, where would you be focused? What would you be taking advantage of? And would you have optimism about getting started now?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what my optimism my optimism would be. I would say though, like learn the technology. Don't rely on AI to write the technology for you, because the only way you can really use it effectively, at least in this era of AI, is to be able to fact check what it writes against what you know. So if it produces something that you understand it enough to be able to say, I don't think so, or why did you do that? Or shouldn't you be thinking about this? So at least make an effort to know whatever the technology it is, even if it's rudimentary JavaScript or PHP or whatever language du jour is for the platform you choose to work with, if you do choose to work with a platform. I don't know if that's a very good answer or not, but also, be flexible.
All right. No, I think that's good advice. I mean, just like when we all got started, you had no idea what you were doing. Is this a good idea? Maybe it seems like it. I like it. Maybe that's the advice I'm trying to give people is like, do you enjoy doing this? Because if you don't, AI is not going to make you enjoy it.
No.
Well, that's 100% sure. Like, do something you enjoy, and bonus points if you can do something you enjoy that actually makes you money.
Yes, that is the bonus, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I thought your answer was very optimistic. You didn't say become a bartender. So, hey. I thought it was optimistic.
At least go somewhere, be a bartender at somewhere where you can eventually be the bar manager, go for upward trajectory.
Well, the problem there is, right, none of the kids are drinking these days. So I don't know if that's a good option.
That's true.
I have heard that.
Record lows.
Yes, I have heard that. So interesting. I don't know. Maybe they're all smoking weed or something instead of popping a cold one.
They're like, we don't need that alcohol anymore.
We're at that moment in the episode where we have to hit you with some rapid fire questions.
Okay, I'll try to rapidly answer and not ramble.
All right. Robbie, do you want to start?
I'm going to do the first one, yes.
All
okay, what's the one WordPress plugin you would take to a deserted island with you?
Redirection, John Godley.
Ooh,
I think it's probably on about every project I touch.
Nice. Bonus points for throwing in the developer's name as well.
Hey, props where props are due.
All right. Second one. Which is better for focus? Silence, lo-fi beats, or 90s grunge?
It's got to be silence. My brain can't work with ambient noise. I wish it could. I would love to be like doubling down on like listening to a podcast and working, but I can't.
I'm kind of the same way. I'll if I try and listen to a podcast and do work, I'll be like, what did I listen to? I have no idea what I just listened to.
I can't listen to a podcast or music with words in it because I'll start typing an email and I'm writing lyrics all of a sudden. I'm like, no. No. If it does, I can listen sometimes to music, like classical music with no words in it or the whole elevator versions of stuff. But, even that sometimes, like you said, Carrie, like sometimes it's like you need silence. Like there's enough going on in my brain. I don't need any outside noises. So, okay.
So if I get an email from you that says, Dear Carrie, it was a total eclipse of the heart.
That's right. You will know. You will know. I was streaming some music in here. I was dancing around my office as I wrote you. What do you think is the most underrated skill a developer could have in their toolkit besides coding? Just what other skill is it that is the best
Communication.
thing and most underrated? I totally agree with that. I would totally agree with that.
I've learned that one the hard way, but it's even more valuable than coding.
Absolutely.
All
well,
right.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Tell us about where people can find you and tell us about your podcast real quick, too.
Sure. Thanks for the invite. I'm over at carriedills.com. When I redid my site, I've stripped about 90% of the content, so it's a lot later than it used to be. But anyways, I still occasionally blog over there, and that's my business site. And then I have a podcast that's nothing to do with work. It's called The Menopausy Show, and that's over at themenopausyshow.com. And it's me and two besties just sharing our experience and journey as peri and menopausal women.
And I'm going to say, you say it doesn't have anything to do with work, but for all the rest of us women out there that are also in that stage, in that era, it affects our work. So yes, it kind of has to do with work.
100% does. It 100% does. Yes.
Yes.
And as the man in the room, I do want to jump in and advise that any husbands or boyfriends also listen to this podcast because there's very helpful information in there for everyone.
Yes.
You don't know how much I appreciate that, Roger. You were the audience we didn't know we had.
On social media, any place that you post regularly that people can follow you?
Over on LinkedIn, just Carrie Dills or Blue Sky. I think I'm C Dills over there.
Okay. All right.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
I have to
Well,
I have
thank
to
you
admit
so
I
much.
fell off the blue sky boat a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Well, I fell off the Twitter train and have
Oh.
not fully done re-entry over on Blue Sky, but it's if I'm going to post, that's where it'll be.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes, no, the Twitter train is well long gone at this point.
It left the station. Toot, toot.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat with us, Carrie. I really appreciate that. And I think that there's some good information out there for people who are either starting out or who work for other people and want to start their own little freelance agency. I think it's a very viable path for a lot of people out there.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on and let me ramble, and love what y'all are doing with the show and look forward to more episodes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Carrie. Well, that was quite the episode, Robbie. What did you think?
I loved it. Because last time we talked to a larger agency with a big team and all that, to hear the perspective from someone, especially right now, or like you said, in the hype of AI and things like that, hearing someone's perspective that is just an independent contractor, as it were, who has an agency of one, and the things that she's doing to be very successful at doing that by collaborating with other agencies of one, working with other agencies that have bigger projects that she can come on and be a team member, as it were, on. I think those are really interesting takes that people who are interested in or lose their job or interested in going out and being a contractor can get a lot out of that. A lot of optimism is what I'll say out of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thought it was really interesting to kind of get some of the progress in WordPress in there as well, right? So, Carrie's been in WordPress for quite some time. She used to use the Genesis framework. For a lot of the people maybe listening, they've not even heard of that. They're not even familiar with what that was all about. But then, the way that she was talking about transitioning into the block editor and full site editing, which there is still a decent amount of resistance from a lot of people that I talk to, even to this day, who are still very much in the page builder camp. I thought it was refreshing to kind of get her take on things. It's interesting to me to think about how these tools work in your arsenal, as it were. So I think, page builders are great if you're, trying to move quickly and just get a site up and you're really focused on just the look and the feel. But if you're really trying to build a custom solution that has a lot of integration, especially with WordPress, but, outside, if you're trying to build into APIs, the block editor and full site editing is just where you need to be.
It is definitely getting much better these days. And so I can see how she's trying to move over into that, especially, and even her custom blocks that she was talking about she's even pulling custom blocks for inside of the WordPress ecosphere. So there's still need for customization, but it is something that you can do in the block editor now without it being, heartburn.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, kind of talking through a little bit, I really enjoyed how she's not in on the hype of things. She's very grounded about, how do you actually take projects apart? We talked about, how does she approach projects and kind of peel back the onion of, what's the outcome? She's very outcome focused. So let's work backwards from that. And I think that's really great advice. I wonder, as an agency owner yourself, where's your approach in there as well?
Yeah. So the funny thing is there's a lot of similarities between Carrie and I because we also do training, right? And so I feel like I told her, I think that we learn a little differently. I think we look at things a little differently too. So even when you're analyzing that project that you want to quote on to a client, you're looking at it also with the lens of a trainer, I would say, because what you're looking at is you are deconstructing it, going like, what do we have going on here? Is there anything that's old, needs to be rebuilt, inefficient, whatever? But then you're also, in your back of your mind, you're building that narrative that you're going to use to present to the client of, this is why we need to do this, and this is why we need to do this, and this is what you have. And a lot of clients, even when you tell them what they have, they're like, what? What is that? And so you need to break that language down from a highly technical language to I can talk to the CEO or anyone else who's not a technical person and they understand what I'm telling them. And I do that as well, though. You do need to kind of look at the fundamentals and the breakdown of a project, especially before you jump in and make a proposal on what you're going to change or do. because you don't want to have any surprises if you just kind of, well, I kind of looked at it and I guess this amount. Now that's really not a good way to do proposals out there. That's where you get yourself in trouble as an agency.
Absolutely. And I think that ties in perfectly with the last question we asked her. What's the most underrated skill that the developer can have? And she said communication.
Communication. I agree with that. That's imperative for the client side. It's imperative for teams and other collaborators. It's all about communicating. And, a lot of true devy types don't really like it. They're very siloed in their own minds and they don't like it, but it is something that they really do need to work on if they're not good with their communication skills, because that is going to be, not jumping on the hype of AI, but we do know it is changing our landscape out there. And part of the changing of that landscape is there will be some people who will lose jobs. But as long as you still can communicate, so you can work with the AI code bases or things that are being done and then communicate with your other team members and your clients, you're still going to have a place in that big mechanism, right?
Absolutely. And, just to even buttonhole or add a pin on there even more, as we're working with these chatbots more and more, the language we're using there is English. And so the better that you're able to articulate what you need out of the chatbots, the better results you're going to get out of that as well. So,
yeah,
great
100%.
episode.
It was a great episode. Good deal.
All right.
That one.
Roger, copy that.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Roger That for this episode. Today, I've got a pretty fun Roger That. So I hosted a dinner for a bunch of agencies recently, and I came up with an idea. I wanted to have a gift for everybody, right, to make them feel kind of special and whatnot. But I didn't want to just get some sort of throwaway gift, some sort of swag that just, nobody's going to use. And so my wife helped me come up with the idea of getting everybody a notebook and a pen so they could make notes about whatever was happening. And then the day of the event, I was sending out the email to remind everybody, hey, you're coming to an event. And I wanted to give some, maybe some inspiration, some ideas for us, topics to talk about and whatnot. But I also threw in there that, hey, I've gotten everybody a gift notebook with a pen. And the ask is that we leave our phones away during the dinner and instead stay focused and connecting with each other. And of course, we're going to have these amazing discussions and you're going to have some great ideas come up and you're going to want to jot things down. So use the notebook to jot down any ideas or tools or whatnot that people have come up with during the dinner. And it was a total success. I had 17 people, including myself. Only 3 people did not take their notebooks home. Everybody else took their notebooks home. I saw people during the event making notes, ripping out pieces of paper, handing it to each other. And I got a lot of great feedback from multiple people saying how great of an idea it was. It really did help them stay focused in the dinner. I also noticed during the dinner, nobody had their phone out. Nobody was texting, social mediaing, or anything. One drawback was I didn't really get any photos of people during the dinner, but I think that maybe there's a plus side to that as well, in that we didn't feel like we were having to, pose for the cameras, and that this wasn't just a business dinner, right? This is really a dinner for community, of like minds coming together, and we just had a lot of fun with it. So if you're planning an event, whether it's with colleagues or business associates or whatever, try this notebook idea. It was a lot of fun and it seemed to work out really well. Roger that.
All right, it is time for another Robbie's Radar, where I'm going to share some tools that I'm actually using inside of my own agency, tools that make my life easier, workflows smoother, and projects are more scalable this way. So today I'm going to talk about this tool called Scribe AI. If you build custom websites, or maybe you make apps or portals or dashboards or anything that has moving parts, you know the pain, right? You finish the project, the client is super excited, and then they're like, now wait, how do I do that again? Even if you did training at the wrap up of it, there's like, how do I do that again? What do I do again? Even if you recorded like your Zoom session of that, it's still not like little snippets. It's not direct instructions. And that is where Scribe becomes incredibly valuable. So Scribe is this tool that automatically creates step-by-step instructions as you are performing the task. So you can actually be showing them, you might want to do it ahead of time though, just walking through that task of maybe I'm adding something into a custom directory that's been made. I turn on my Scribe, I start going through it, and then I click on this, I type something here, submit that. And as I am going along, Scribe is one, capturing every click that I'm making. It's capturing every thing that I type. It is doing screenshots. And not only is it doing those screenshots, but it zooms in appropriately as it should and all of that. And so when you're done, you can then edit that, which is nice. So it does it and it takes its first stab at it, right? So it's written instructions and it's done it all for you automatically. But now you've got this clean structured document that has the text that it came up with for the steps. It's got the screenshots in there. It's clean, it's structured. It's got that step-by-step documentation look already. And so now all you need to do is go in there and clean it up. Maybe you typed a password and it actually typed it out. You can go in there and take that out. So you can adjust it after the fact. Once you're adjusted, you can then generate that out, make a PDF and send it to your client. And so for agencies, this is huge because it is giving that training a retention there for your clients, right? So you not only did it, but now they have it. They don't just have a recording. You could record your Zoom training as well, but now they have two ways of doing this. And a lot of people learn better by just pulling up that step-by-step and going through it. Or maybe it is something that they just are only going to do 3 times a year and no one can remember that. But they can just open up their instructions, go through their step-by-step, close it, and open it up the next time they need to. Much, much better for them. So as an agency, I mean, it's unlimited what all you could do, but like you could do your admin training guides for your clients. You could do internal SOPs, by the way, for your team. So maybe you have someone who does a job inside of your team and no one else knows how they're doing it. Have them create this SOP for you, basically step-by-step instructions, right? So that then anyone on the team could pick up those instructions and do it for you. This is great for handoff documentation. If you've got some maintenance that needs to happen on a website, you could hand off, this is how you're going to do that maintenance every month. You could also give them end user walkthroughs, right? So maybe you've given them all the admin side, but they have users that are going to be using that website. You could go ahead and give them those walkthroughs. So now you've made the client the hero. They not only have provided this new website or this new service, but they've also given the instructions to their users out there. And this is also, as an agency, when you start to grow and you want to onboard more people, this is going to be great for you because you've got the way you were doing these steps internally that you can then, when you bring on that new hire, let them go through those documentations, use it as part of your onboarding so that they match your team and the way your team does things. So instead of writing out this long email explaining how to update a page to your client, just do Scribe, run it while you're doing this one time, done. Check it, make sure you don't need to change anything, send it on to your client. It is great. And that free version of Scribe, by the way, works in your browser, which for web agencies, this is great, right? Most of your instructions fall within that browser. So you're walking through a WordPress dashboard or a Drupal backend, any CMS or a CRM or SaaS tool, anything that is running in that browser, you can capture all of it. And then if you say, well, I have some other things I need to show them outside of that, maybe you need to show them how to use FileZilla or whatever. Once you do that, you will have to go with a paid version because that expands the capability and gives you more control, more flexibility. It gives you a lot more broader documentation options that you can use for your clients, right? And that's, to me, that's where it really starts shining for agencies. Is managing all these clients and then your own internal systems. It can get very convoluted. But if you will document as you're going along, it's going to make that so much easier to scale up. And what I really like about this the most is it's like it's removing the friction of you doing your documentation. I mean, let's be honest, most agencies don't document enough. We know this, right? And it's not because we don't care, but it's because it takes time. And we're just having to get stuff done. We're always trying to get stuff done. So if you can duplicate your time of getting something done and creating that documentation, that's going to save you time as well as going to maybe get it done, right? Because documentation is usually the first thing that gets skipped whenever the deadlines are coming up, right? So Scribe's going to turn that around for you and let you do something on the website and make the documentation at the same time. So it's going to turn that documentation into So it's going to turn that documentation from being like a chore no one wants to do into something that's just automatically happening while you're doing the work anyway. And here is the strategic benefit that I want you to think about is when you document better, you reduce your support tickets from those clients, you're empowering your clients, which they appreciate, and you can onboard your team members faster. And this gives you a much more professional look to your clients out there. Whether it's perceived or not, it increases the look of your professionalism out there for you. Because now you're not just delivering a website, you're delivering a system with training built into it. And that changes the way your clients look at you, I promise you. So if you're running custom web projects and you don't already have a clean way to create repeatable instructions, I highly recommend checking out Scribe. You can start with the free version, use it the next time you update something for a client and see how much time it saves you. Then you can email that client and say, yes, I've updated that page. Also, I've attached a PDF that shows you how to do it for yourself if you need to, if you can't get me quickly enough. And chances are you're going to really shine to that client, and you're going to want to add this into your permanent toolkit too. I'm telling you, give it a go. This has been another Robbie's Radar, and I've got more intel coming to you soon. All right, so this is our R&R section where we just like to bring up some of the things that we do to manage our crazy, hectic lives out there.
Absolutely.
So, Roger, what's your tip this week?
So, I've been traveling this week, and one of the things that kind of hit me while I was on the road is eating and trying to eat well so that, you keep your energy levels, you don't feel too bloated, and just, you don't get indigestion. And, these are the last things you want to have happen to you when you're in a client meeting, any of the stuff. You're trying to be productive when you're on the road. You're spending a decent amount of money doing that. So you really want to take advantage of it. And so there's a few hacks that I have when I'm on the road. So the first thing I do is I try and always have snacks with me. That way, I don't need to, run around and try and find some place to buy snacks. I've just got them in my bag already. I've got a couple of go-to items, power bars. Maybe I'll keep some small oranges in there and just keep it really simple. Another Hanger management, absolutely critical. Oh my gosh. Another thing that I like to do, I'm very restrictive in my diet. And so sometimes it can be very hard to find a breakfast place when I'm on the road. And so a great hack I've got there is I go to a grocery store and I'll go and get a couple of staples. So I'll get, a bag of the little oranges. I'll get like 5 or 6 bananas. And then maybe I'll get like a loaf of bread and like a little thing of hummus. And then I've got those in my hotel room. And so when I wake up in the morning, I can immediately eat a snack, get over that morning hanger. If I'm coming back to the hotel to pick things up throughout the day, I've just got the quick ability to grab a banana and just have another quick snack, maybe before I get to dinner or before I get to lunch. Hanger management is absolutely critical. Staying on top of that and trying to eat well and just feel as good as you can. And then, of course, I absolutely blew it on the flight home, stopped at the Voodoo Donut in the Denver airport, and it was delicious. I regret nothing, but I did fall asleep almost immediately on the plane. And then as soon as I got home, I had to take a nap. So that's what I've got. What do you got for us, Robbie?
You brought up the Voodoo Donut, though. I tell you, some of friends and I, one time we were in Austin and we went to the original first Voodoo Donut, on 6th Street or whatever it is.
Sure.
Anyway, that was the only time I'd ever had it. Probably the last time I ever had it. I'll never have it again because 4 of us, and we only had 1 donut each, and we had taken donuts home to have the next day. We were all so sick. We were just like, I can't have any more sugar, probably for a week. There's so much sugar in there. I mean, they were good. Don't get me wrong, but oh my God, so sweet. But I love that. And I also too, I think maybe it's as you travel more and more, you get that I better have some snacks on me because you just never know when things are going to go south and you're stuck in an airport or sitting on a tarmac or something like that. So good to have things with you. And I love that you're also getting things from the grocery store and putting them in your room, because one of the other things that happens to us when we're traveling to all these shows is you're in the air, you're dehydrating. You're also, anytime you're eating out at restaurants, you're getting so much more salt, so you're getting more inflammation. So by you going and doing your grocery store hack, you're avoiding some of that inflammation that makes you feel so bad on those trips. So
Definitely.
Good one. I love that.
Thank you.
This week, I wanted to talk about, and it's odd because we talked about music in the episode with Carrie, and what I wanted to bring up is music. I use music. Sometimes when I'm working, I'll use the, no words type of music to just kind of it depends on what I'm doing work-wise, but if I can listen to music and just kind of chill while I'm doing it, I'll do that because I feel kind of like I talked about with the singing bowls, vibrations do a lot to our body. But music is twofold to me. It's the vibrations that you're getting. Like I like a lot of music that they're producing now with the different frequencies. So you can get these certain hertz that do things to our body, we know. And so I like that. And then the second thing is the words that are in those. Words matter. Words matter more than we know to our brain. It takes it in and it digests that as real thoughts. And so I try to listen to very positive music. I've several artists I follow that like sing about manifestation and things like that, but it's very positive. As a matter of fact, my playlist is called Positive List because I try to find things that are very positive so that it keeps my mental game up in a positive space. So I love music. I think it's great. Yeah.
I really like that a lot because, there's also that whole kind of saying and thought process of surrounding yourself with people that bring you up and that push you. And I think it applies to everything else in our lives, right? Like the food that you're eating, if it's helping you, the music, whatever you're reading, manifestation it's real. I'm not a true hardcore believer in that necessarily, but, when you have positive thoughts, it helps you just stay more positive. And, it's really easy these days to fall into the cynicism trap. It's really easy to just, go onto Reddit and doom scroll things. And I think if you want to be successful in business, if you want to be successful with your friends and your partners and whatnot, trying to manifest that positivity, you can never do enough.
Absolutely. And they also have just released a study. It was about a month ago or so. I saw the headlines about it. And they studied that in like nursing homes and assisted living homes, they started kind of almost doing raves. Like they're like literally doing DJ club based music because there's something about the frequency and the beats per minute that they say helps reverse aging and dementia. And so, and as well as just their ability to move around, that it was the music was giving them these things. It was that vibration that was coming through to them. So I thought that was very interesting. And I was like, now every DJ out there just went, great, I'm going to have work forever now. They'll be hitting up the assisted living homes. They'll be like, we're having a rave tonight. Come on out, people.
I love it. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right, cool. Well, we'll have more tips for you next time.